Throughout all of the different films that I've seen, there's always been one in my film catalog that I've ignored. Whenever I looked at the title, I never thought it would actually be any good. Recently, I joined a film class, however, at my school, and I was asked to do an assignment on this film. Looking more into it, it was shaping itself to be something new and exciting. With a budget of $5.8 million, a co-written script with Rod Serling, and music by Jerry Goldsmith, Franklin Schaffner brought onto the world one of the most interesting and bizarre films of the 60s. The film had an interesting presentation, a small cast, and did so well that sequels are still being made today. So, after a century of ignoring this film, I decided to sit down and finally find out what Planet of the Apes had to offer. Does this film live up to today's standards, or does it deserve to be forgotten? Hello everyone, I'm Jared, and welcome to the Triple J Studio Podcast. Today I'm joined with an author of 3 books with his ongoing series, The Jared Lagman Files, who's also my dad. Hello.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Well, I mean, you were in the house and you were the most available, so I figured, hey, he's here.
Told me to sit down, and I did.
So, yeah. So one of the most interesting things is that you've grown up with this film, needless to say, because whenever I talked about Planet of the Apes or you wanted to watch it, I always kind of put it on the back burner and not really thinking much of it.
Yeah, I was about 10 years old when I first saw it. I just happened on it. It was happened to be on television, and I don't know why, but it just struck a big chord with me, and I just loved it. And I watched it. There's like 5 of them, so I watched bits and pieces of the other 4, but this one I loved. And
well, that's one of the main things that struck with me about this whole entire series is that it was essentially, it started from 68, and then they made 4 new ones from 1971 to 75.
Mm-hmm.
So, plus an animated show, so I knew it had something to offer, but the entire premise, I think, is what threw me off guard. So, yeah, so the film was made in 1968 and was directed by Franklin J. Schaffner. It won critical acclaim and today still has an 88% on Rotten Tomatoes. The film was released on February 8th, to be more specific, and was filmed in Utah and Arizona, which I guess was what Franklin Schaffner thought was an alien-like planet at the time.
Yeah, I mean, it looked a lot like what people would think, I guess, an alien planet would look like, but, I mean...
To me, it still looked like the Flintstones.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's hard to find a place, probably, too, that you don't have something man-made somewhere in the background.
Yeah.
And that didn't. You could see for miles, and you couldn't tell anything was there, so... That was probably another reason. And there was water where they could land, or I'll crash.
Which, very convenient, which I wanted to talk more on that when we get to that scene. So, I guess we'll just jump right in. So the film starts by introducing us to George Taylor, who for some reason is just referred to as Taylor, even though in the credits he's referred to as George. I tried looking up why they referred to him as Taylor, but there's no real reason. Just everyone calls him Taylor. He's played by Charlton Heston. We are also introduced to Landon, played by Robert Gunnar, and Dodge, played by Jeff Burton. And they are all going into deep hibernation in their spaceship in their spaceship. And it is said on their dashboard that they've aged for about 18 months due to time dilation. I thought this scene was very interesting in the sense that it was quiet. There wasn't much explanation as to what was happening other than these people are in a spaceship going really quick.
Yeah, well, he kind of explained it in a nutshell in the beginning when he was the only one awake for whatever reason and smoking a cigar in the spaceship.
Which they sent him up with multiples, so I guess multiple people thought, yeah, he can go up with that.
So I really didn't understand that part of it because he was awake there and then he goes into he said that they were almost done, and then he gets into the little hibernation chamber and you know, gets frozen or whatever. But why was he out in the first place? I didn't understand that.
I guess it was kind of like in the movie Avatar situation where he wakes up, does a little recording, and then goes back. But it is interesting that he was in hibernation, woke back up, took a little message, went back.
Well, especially since when he got into the hibernation, that time that you see in the movie, the lady above him in the thing was fine. And then he gets in the hibernation, and then when they wake up, hers is cracked, and she's that,
right, which was
dead.
which was the next thing. So when after the opening credits, which I personally still love, how it's very ambiance, you kind of get like a spacious feel. I got kind of an Interstellar feel with the opening. But after that, Taylor wakes back up, and I know they try to make the woman's death sad. I don't know her name. I didn't know her purpose until halfway through the film, so it was very hard to actually relate with her. But also with the sound effect that plays of just essentially grass scratching. So it was very...
Yeah, the squealing noise I kind of attributed to the time the movie was made. Maybe that's more of something they did. I don't know.
I mean...
But it really didn't make a lot of sense in terms of... I mean, I would have thought dun 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 would have been more appropriate.
It would have been worse, but it still would have been more appropriate. But after that, the ship starts to sink almost immediately. And then before Taylor leaves, he notices that the time is November 25th, 3978, which is about 2 millennia after 1972. They go onto a little boat. They get all of that. Which, I don't know, did the saying going, going, gone come from that film? Because that's what...
No, I think that was more of a baseball term.
Okay. I didn't know if that came from baseball or this movie and they put it into baseball.
No, baseball for like hitting a home run.
Okay.
Go.
So they get to shore. Dodge does a little soil test and says, yep, it's dirt. And it can sustain life. It's also during this scene where Taylor is going through and they have 2 days of rations.
3 days.
3 days.
Which didn't look like it.
It looked like a snack for one of them. It didn't look enough to even sustain Taylor, who is the most... He's running a lot in this film. He's running, dodging.
Well,
he goes through court in one scene, which we'll get to later. It doesn't seem like enough food to sustain.
No, and in the beginning, too, it's like they're not really putting in time references of... Because they have a scene where they're multiple scenes where they're walking, and then they have to dodge those boulders that are coming off the hill. So they run way more than they need to, past them, and then once they get beneath these 2 boulders that they think they're safe under, I think as Landon offers them water and says 8 ounces left. Well, that's all they had for how long? They didn't really give you a time reference of how long they've been there yet, and all of a sudden they only have 8 ounces left. It didn't really make a ton of sense.
Yeah, and this is coming from not NASA scientists, but ANSA scientists, which you could tell from their suit, which is very interesting. So during that scene too, I believe it is... Not Landon. I only know Taylor's name, but it's Taylor, Landon, and who's the last person?
Dodge.
I believe it was Landon who went and said who planted the little American flag.
Mm-hmm.
Which I thought was ironic near the end of the film, where they find out that it is Earth that they're on the entire time. More into that later. So I thought it was very interesting. He's taking a tiny little American flag and claiming America, essentially. Or the state of New York. Which...
True.
Which was very, very interesting when I watched the opening 30 minutes again. So that was neat.
Well, there's also... That's when he's planting that flag is when you kind of get a real gist for what a jerk Taylor is.
Oh, Taylor's a jerk throughout the whole film.
Yeah, but that's when you kind of first figure it out fully, because Taylor starts laughing ridiculously loud. Yeah, maniacally. Just because he's planting a flag. And it was way over the top.
He's a jerk mainly to to Landon the entire time, because later, going back to the rock scene when those are all falling, there's a whole scene of where Landon's going, like, I'm not afraid to die. And then Taylor just outright says he's afraid to die. Oh, you feeling misty yet? It's like, give him a break. Everything he knows, his planet's gone. His family's dead. Give him a break.
I don't, and I question if this was a reality somehow, would they put
Hope not.
someone like that in charge of a mission like that who doesn't get along with really anybody? There's no one who he seems to get along with except Nova, the lady that doesn't talk.
Yeah, conveniently. But yeah, no, Landon even makes a comment, because they're both guessing why they joined the mission. Weird time to have a conversation like that, but they both have a conversation about why they joined the mission. Taylor gets it immediately. Landon even makes the comment that he doesn't like anybody. And then Taylor just says that the whole reason he joined was because he believes something out there is better than man. And even makes the comment as he keeps going, has to.
Yeah, I remember that. What struck me as funny about that whole time frame in the movie was that he's explaining to Landon and Dodge basically a recap of why they're out there. And kind of, I don't know why he's explaining it to them. This is something that should have been drilled into their heads way before they got on the ship.
Yeah.
They should have known that.
Day one, when they sign up, it should be, this is what will happen.
Yeah, you're not coming back at least in this time frame.
Yeah, Landon seemed like the most real to me, because the other scientist who does the dirt, does like the atmosphere and all of that, he kind of just gets the ball rolling that, okay, this is a sustainable planet, and then we never hear from him again. And then, meanwhile, you have Taylor, who's just a jerk leader. But that kind of makes sense in the sense that Taylor shouldn't really be the main character.
Well, I think he could be the main character. I mean, they wanted to portray him as a strong guy, which they did.
Bit too strong.
And he wasn't unintelligent. He was very intelligent, but he was just a jerk to everybody that he came in contact with. I mean, at this point, it's fair to say everybody in the universe. But he because he wasn't likable, I think that it could have really hurt the movie a lot.
Yeah, I mean, they took a risk, and I knew that Rod Serling because since he's known for the Twilight Zone series, he's very well known for having these types of characters be going through these different type of bizarre events, and at the end realize that's something different, so it's a plot twist. So I feel like the Planet of the Apes is essentially like a Twilight Zone episode, but in movie form.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. It definitely could have been a Twilight Zone episode.
Just like a little episode or something like that. But either way, I just feel like Taylor he's not a hero, but he's not a villain.
Yeah, he's not a hero because he doesn't make anything better for anybody. I mean, his two friends get killed. I guess he makes it better for Nova, the girl.
Well,
but otherwise he's not empowering any of the apes. He's not making them, he's not really defeating Dr. Zaius.
He comes and he goes. He doesn't make an impact.
Yeah, he comes and he understands and he leaves and he saves himself, but he's...
Well, and even going back to when they're in the desert, the wasteland, or what's it called, the forbidden area? Forbidden zone.
Yeah.
Yeah. When they were in that place, they noticed the scarecrow-like things after they discover life on the planet and then ripping it out of the ground. So once they find the scarecrows, he walks up, finds a tree, running water, and he does two things that I don't quite agree with. One, he completely ignores the scarecrows, doesn't question why they're there, which it's never explained again why they're there, especially if it's the Forbidden Zone. Then why are there scarecrows there?
And who made them? Because the humans didn't seem smart enough to make them. And why would the apes make them?
Yeah, and then when they find the water, they find the oasis, I guess you could call it.
Yeah.
Instead of preserving it, they immediately derobe and they jump in and they bathe.
Yeah, it could have been acid for all
Could have been acid, could have had like these weird mutant creatures. And we're supposed to believe that the world ended because of a nuclear war. Because that's around the time that, like, the movie was made around a nuclear war.
Cold War
time, yeah. So, I'm not sure, I'm not 100% how radioactivity works, but in the sense of, could the water still be contaminated?
I'm sure it probably could.
Yeah, so it probably would have done something, but either way, they find water, and then their clothes get stolen by the humans, and they take them, and they find just enough clothing to cover themselves up to keep this a G-rated film. And then once they do that, this is where we had Mom make a comment during the film, where one of them, it cuts to the astronauts, no fruit, cuts back to the humans, cuts back, and then they notice that one of them has a fruit. And then a little later, they cut back to the humans, cut back to the astronauts, and now two of them have fruit. You don't know if the fruit's even edible. It just happens to looks like a banana, so they decide to eat it.
Well, and they're looking at the humans as though they're watching television too. They
don't care.
They're just hanging out, and they don't seem to grasp the situation. They're out in what they think is some alien planet, and they're just hanging out, kind of noticing these people that look like they could be humans. He said something about they look like they could be Neanderthal man or caveman or something.
Which they didn't.
Which they looked like them.
They looked completely normal. They didn't...
Just dirty. And long hair.
Yeah, which realistically, even Nova, who we're introduced to later, the hair's a little messed up. But other than that,
otherwise,
perfectly fine.
Nicely combed, beautiful girl.
Nails are done. Mascara's on.
She didn't seem too upset about any of this.
She was fine. But either way, we're getting ahead of ourselves because during this, the armed gorillas are on horseback. That's a note that I made, but now reading it out loud, it just sounds worse. Is that armed gorillas on horseback come out with guns and start to hunt the humans. This is a film that multiple people agreed to make. And they went, yes. And then they filmed it.
Well, and I like, though, that they had the gorillas being the military and they had the orangutans being the government. Or
they had the chimpanzees being the doctors. Yeah, they were all kind of...
Yeah, they were segregated in that way. And they said something in the when they first started, when you first met Zira, about that there's no barriers anymore or something, and that we could do whatever we want, kind of like they had segregated it to some point.
Yeah, kind of like a separate but equal. Yeah, that's what was going through my head during that, was that they have a wonderful civilization. It looks like they're doing okay, but it all kind of seems like, okay, you're born this, so you will become this, in a sense, or it's just highly convenient and maybe it's like a family thing.
Could also make more sense to the viewer.
Yeah, and not just have it be all confused.
Easier for because everybody wore the same thing too.
Mm-hmm.
So made more sense to watch versus trying to mix it up, I guess, too. But
yeah,
they made their point about it. So.
But during this chase scene, Taylor is shot in the throat, and then he's captured with the other humans, and they're taken back to... Does the city really have a name? Or is it just kind of a city of apes?
Not that I remember, actually.
I'm not sure. We'll just call it City of Apes. So they're taken back there, and then this is when we're introduced to three other people. We're introduced to psychologist Zira, who is played by Kim Hunter, and a Surgeon Galeen, who's played by Wright King, and Nova as well, who I don't think is even credited.
I thought she was.
I'm not sure, but if I can find... Oh, sorry, here she is. Linda Harrison plays Nova. So during all of this, Nova and Taylor are both getting a blood transfusion, which I guess is why they're both very close to each other throughout the film. I think that's what they were trying to explain. Because later when they're both in the cage outside, Zero makes the comment of that Nova remembers the blood transfusion when Nova's pointing at her arm.
All right.
So maybe that's what they were trying to talk about.
Yeah, that could be, because they don't explain other than that why they kept them at all together.
Yeah. Also, I just happened to look up the different. They call it a caste system of the area, which Taylor apparently observes through the film. The gorillas are military police and hunters and workers. The orangutans oversee the affairs of government, science, and religion. And then chimpanzees are mostly scientists. I'm not sure what that list means by mostly scientists, but I guess if you want to be what you want.
I guess they're talking about the little kid.
Yeah. But it is neat that the orangutans are government, science, and religion. Like the three main things that are in the most power and also are the most... They don't mix well. Like if you put science and religion into a room, there's probably going to be some type of debate.
Yeah.
In a sense. Especially with government.
Right.
Like there was the whole thing during I believe it was the 80s when it was the religion in school. That's still a thing today, actually.
It's been an ongoing thing.
It's been because that's still happening today with should the word God be in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Right. Yeah, I don't think that's ever going to go away. Anything church and state is going to always have friction.
That's what I was talking about.
Something I was going to say and I forgot now. I don't know. We'll move on. It'll come back to me.
We'll move on because one of the things that caught my attention... There's a lot of things that have caught my attention, so sorry if I keep saying that, but Zero tends to call Taylor Bright Eyes a lot, which... Did he have bright eyes?
Well, no more bright than you or I, but...
Well,
it's
yeah,
kind of
not
like
literal.
it's just
not literal, but...
It's a pet name because they look at him as an animal.
That's true.
So
they're doing all that, and then Taylor writes on a piece of paper to Zero saying, "My name is Taylor," and then that's when Zero goes, "Gotta take this guy home. Gotta show my fiance Cornelius," who's played by Roddy McDowell, and he is very calm for this. For just, essentially that would be almost like me coming home with a giraffe and saying, "It can do art," and you being completely fine with it. Mm-hmm. Or something like that.
He didn't seem too astonished, although...
He actually seemed underwhelmed during this scene.
Well, in his defense, other than his words, I mean, if you look at... You can't really take their face as anything because they had very limited movement.
Yeah.
In those masks. So,
which is still incredible.
Yeah.
To me, is the artwork and the structure of the set and the makeup that went into it. It was very, not over the top because it needed to be, more in the sense that it looked real enough. Yeah.
Yeah, you gave it the leeway of the mouths not looking perfect because you knew what it was.
The kissing scenes were weird.
Yeah.
When it just looked like they were kind of high-fiving each other's face with their face.
Yeah, it did make sense other than to show they were together, but...
Yeah, he's also, Cornelius is also an archaeologist instead. So the two decide to call in your favorite. You know him. Dr. Zaius.
Dr. Zaius.
He's played by Maurice Evans. And Dr. Zaius, when you were talking about him before the film, I thought he was actually going to be a good guy. I thought he was going to be the guy that's, who's going to help Taylor.
Oh.
And be like a fun type of guy. But slowly but surely, he actually showed himself to be more of the hero of the film.
Think so?
He's about the same as Taylor, in the sense that Taylor is, as we've talked about, he walks in, doesn't affect anything, steals Nova, they leave, and nothing happens in the society. Dr. Zaius really isn't a bad person, though. He just wants to keep his people safe.
Right, but he's also he's putting down.
He's putting down future inventions.
He's not but he's not recognizing he knows what history was, but he wasn't telling anybody.
Yeah, which was very interesting. There were two things that happened. There was in the cave near the end, he threw away the doll, which more on that later. Mm-hmm. He threw away the doll in the cave, and then the paper airplane that Taylor made to show how his ship landed. I love the scene where they're talking and he just crumples it up.
Yeah.
One hand. I thought that was very well done and kind of established who Dr. Zaius was.
Yeah, that's good symbolism.
And that was good. I like that.
Could I just go back 1 minute too? I remembered what I was going to talk about before.
Yeah.
Going back to the caste system, the orangutans, with, you said religion, government, and science, they were in charge of?
Government, science, religion.
And that was, I realized when you said that was the purpose for that scene when when Taylor's running away and he goes past that funeral. Mm-hmm. Remember? And there's an orangutan is leading it, and he's giving a eulogy about an ape, and so that, because I kind of had wondered what's the point of that other than to show that they care for their own. But yeah, that symbolizes the whole religion part of it.
Well, and I was trying so hard not to bring up Disney in this film, because it was very, very, like, this was essentially the time when a lot of Disney classics were coming out. 101 Dalmatians, Swiss Family Robinson. And one of them was The Jungle Book in 1967. And I can't remember his name, but the orangutan in the film, one of the first lines in the song of I Want to Be Like You is, "Now I'm the king of the jungle." So, was it? Yeah. I wonder if it was. I'm not like an animal person much, like jungle wise, but I wonder if orangutans are just seen as supposed to be the higher ups.
Could be,
because this movie only came out a year later. But again, I don't know that much to actually delve into that subject.
No, it's interesting though.
But we are getting to one of the interesting scenes where, before I talk about that, the society has, because I was trying to figure this out, the whole idea is that Taylor starts to begin to understand what this whole world is entailing. The apes are the leaders, and the apes consider the primitive humans as vermin that are hunted, killed outright, enslaved, or used as science experiments, which that seemed like it was a very interesting point of view in the sense that, okay, now reverse it in the sense of like animal testing. You have people testing on rats, fish, dogs, cats, all these different types of animals. Now if you reverse it and you suddenly have a human testing on a human, well then you're not allowed to do that because you're hurting another human in a sense. Mm-hmm. So it was very interesting, different point of view. During that time, after the archaeologists, after Dr. Zaius is introduced, Taylor is about to be imprisoned, I guess, would you say?
You mean near the end?
No, still near the beginning, before he escapes.
Oh, okay. He wasn't quite sure what... I don't think they understood yet what they were going to do to him because...
Yeah, he was just locked up, right?
Yeah, he was just...
Yeah, so he's just in this cage. He escapes, and this is one of the parts of the film that took a very different approach in the sense that most of the time we're walking, it's slow, but now suddenly everyone's bursting through and we're running and the music kicks in, and the music is underwhelming. I know it won an Oscar, and I know I told you this too, was that it won number 18 from out of 100 years of film and 100 songs. They chose this soundtrack as number 18. It won an Oscar for Best Original Soundtrack. It's not good. It sounds like someone took metal and just hit it whenever there's a certain like boom scene.
Yeah.
It's very underwhelming. But either way, the action scene made up for it. So Taylor's running, and they get to the museum. They find that Dodge is stuffed and he's dead. Taxidermy.
Which was quick.
Very quick. They've been there for a day.
Yeah. I didn't understand the point of stuffing him at all. And then his eyes were all weird, too.
You know what I loved was that they couldn't find real mannequins, so if you look close when the people are near the camera, you can actually see them kind of moving a little bit. It just looks like a gentle breeze.
Yep.
So that was...
I thought it was weird he found a museum in the first place, of all places to go in. But I guess that shows their culture.
It shows their culture, and it's also going to be very interesting to view that in the sense of he's running, and then suddenly he goes, oh, this is Dodge. Like, I know this person.
Well, something that just struck me, if apes think humans are vermin, and they despise them so much, why are the humans all through this museum?
Yeah.
Why would they
keep them?
It's like us making a museum about snakes when we hate snakes.
Yeah, Indiana Jones would just leave.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is very interesting about all of that. And also, I made a comment on this, and this is just more of a joke. It didn't affect the viewing of the film at all. But when he's running down the stairs, there's no rails. If the rest of the film has doors, windows, the laws are the same, everything's generally around the same, so should the safety provisions. Those apes need to be safe.
Yeah.
So, because Taylor just jumped out off a set of stairs. So that all happens. Eventually, Taylor gets captured. And magically, his throat heals.
At the perfect time.
He's no grunting or anything. Full out, doesn't need to clear his throat. He's fine. And he says one of the most famous lines in the film, "Take your stinking paws off me, you dirty ape." Which, it didn't strike me as one of the most compelling lines in film history.
Well...
It's not supposed to, I know,
but... Not supposed to. It's in the context of the movie, because it's the first words he said.
Yeah, and they even...
the apes.
And I guess they even knew that line was important, because they even played the dramatic music.
Yeah.
Like, da-da.
Kind of similar to if it was reversed. I mean, that's how the whole movie is. You're looking at it backwards, but if, if an ape started talking to you, you'd kind of back up. Mm-hmm.
Well, there's many.
I think we'd get a lot more freaked out than they did in the movie too.
Yeah, they were more.
He can talk.
All right. Carry on.
What's he have to say? In fact, they were more about forget what he has to say. He can talk. Let's use his brain for science.
Before we continue, during the chasing scene, there was a funeral going on. That was interesting. To run into a funeral. But along with this was also who I'm just going to call Kid Ape, who's just walking, and then he goes, "Look, Ma, a human!" And he gets launched. Taylor, this shows again how much of a jerk Taylor is. He throws him, and not only does the kid get up during a funeral, who I'm assuming the kid must know, the departed, but he also leaves. No one questions why he gets up. And the military and policemen chasing him are very quiet. There's a funeral going on. Don't disturb them. Can we shoot? No, not yet. So that's all happening. Kid gets launched, and the rest happen. Lines quoted. And that's when he's locked up again. But first, we get a court scene with the president of the assembly, who's played by James Whitmore, Dr. Zaius, of course, and Maximus, Woodrow Parfait, and then Dr. Honoris, who's played by James Daly, plays the prosecution. Who do you want to? You made a note about a certain scene that you liked with the president of the assembly, Dr. Zaius and Maximus.
Oh yeah, they did their see no evil, hear no evil, and speak no evil,
which I thought was very well done.
Yeah, I thought it was apropos given the situation.
Big word.
Yeah.
It was very. I felt like they could have done it more, not obvious.
Yeah, it was
like
a
if
little
they
obvious.
did like a different order of it. But I guess then many people wouldn't have seen it. But you've seen this film before.
Yeah.
And I haven't, but I guess this was the first time that you noticed that.
Yeah.
I guess they accomplished their job.
Right. I never noticed it, or I don't know, maybe I missed that scene a time or two. I don't know, but it was not sure why they chose to put that in, to be honest. I mean, I get it, but I don't know. Interesting choice for him.
It was very different in the sense that just the entire court case of how it plays out is he's not allowed to speak, and this was also a scene I could tell Rod Serling wrote, because you had the different lines of, like, I believe it's Dr. Honoris that goes, do you know why are all apes made the exact same? And he comes back with, well, apes aren't all created equal. He goes, nope. Why do humans have no souls? And it's one of those, as soon as I heard that line, that's when I thought Twilight Zone. Just black and white, done. That's this scene.
Right.
So that was very interesting. And then Zaius just privately takes Taylor in, and they have a little chat, and it quickly starts to go up, and he says, within 6 hours, you gotta tell me where you're from, or we're going to do scientific experiments on you. Why 6 hours?
Yeah.
Why not 12?
It seemed arbitrary.
Let's see. You have 14 and a half minutes. Like, very interesting. Also, I did look up the name of the city while we were talking. It's called Ape City.
Oh, that's good.
So we were very close with City of Apes. So
one thing I found interesting too, a little off topic, but you have all these apes in there together in this one city. It doesn't seem as though they expand too far out into the rest of the world, and they don't say anything about separation.
It's just in the place of Manhattan.
Yeah, but you have apes with British accents. You have
I noticed that.
You have a couple with New York accents, which is good, I guess, because they are in New York. And then ones with pretty standard type
normal
of
American
Midwest type, whatever. That's interesting when they're all in the same place and seem to grow up together.
Yeah,
where the British ones came from.
I guess just from Britain. Which do the other films? Have you seen the other films?
Pieces of them, yeah.
Do any of them explore outside of America?
They're different because they're like one of them. The apes go back to where we are.
Like time travel?
Uh-huh.
Oh no. I'm sure it's great, but
I don't remember them ever really talking about the entire planet of the apes, like separations. And
well, I don't think it would have sold as well if it was just New York of Apes or something like that.
Right.
So either way, we are then introduced to Zero's nephew, Lucius, I believe is his name.
Yeah.
Lucius, who's played by Lou Wagner. Very annoying. I think they were trying to, because this was also the time when, or like we're starting to exit the 60s, but it's during this time when teen rebellion is starting to hit. And you're starting to see more films of where you gotta be cool if you want to be with teens, and you had cool beach movies with like the sharks and the vroom vroom motorcycles. So you had
Frankie Valli, that kind of thing?
Yeah, that whole thing. So probably that's where I think Lewis was inspired upon.
Yeah, I don't.
I know you haven't.
Be.
Have you seen the film Rebel Without a Cause?
No.
We'll have to watch that later, but he definitely struck me as that type of person. In the sense that he was essentially cool, didn't want to listen to the adults, but kind of did because he was forced to, because he's a teen.
I really wondered where they got the idea for that character from, because he was immature.
Immature, trickster, rebellious.
Well, at the same time, being that immature and an obvious, not child, but teen, I guess.
Yeah.
They give him, when they're near the end, they give him a gun and say, guard the door. And then they sneak up on him later. And so I don't know, it doesn't seem like something you would entrust an adolescent with.
Yeah.
It shouldn't even been in that situation. So, I don't know. He didn't add anything to the movie, I don't think.
He didn't. I think he was just there to kind of be
a little bit of
a comedy.
Comic relief.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I was getting to it. But eventually, Lewis does get him out of the cage. Gets him out by saying he's taking him to the zoo. Which, what would that entail? Would it just be humans, or would it also be the horse?
I don't know. They never defined a zoo, so...
They didn't, because the horse is also just a horse. The horse didn't change. We saw that, but I think that's the only other animal we saw. We didn't see, like, a dog, or giraffe, or elephant.
No, they didn't show any other animals.
So, I don't know. Another mystery. But Zara and Cornelius, they take Taylor and Nova to the Forbidden Zone. It still sounds like Rod Serling wanted to kind of put in Twilight Zone, but they wouldn't allow it. So they leave to go see where his ship crashed. And then Cornelius and Zara want to gather proof of an earlier civilization. Humans, essentially. So they go into the cave with Dr. Zaius and his soldiers who have just shown up because they know where he is. They find them, and then they go into the cave. It is 2 minutes of them walking to the cave, not saying anything. Nothing really happens. They all just kind of walk up to this ladder, which was... Did they say that was Sorry, not Dr. Zaius. Cornelius's work site?
Cornelius, he had been given a grant by Dr. Zaius at some point years prior to go explore, and then he found all this stuff.
Well, then,
and he said a couple times, with Dr. Zaius' permission, I went, and then Dr. Zaius said, he far exceeded where he should have been going and all this, and so he tried to tell him he wasn't really supposed to do all that.
Yeah, so that's once again Dr. Zaius saying he's going too far with looking into this, which I guess he didn't, because he found enough proof to show. I think this was the part of the movie that most people were like, maybe he's on Earth, or maybe humans colonized here. I think the last thing people thought was that it was Earth, the entire film.
Yeah, I doubt it at the time.
I feel like there was when this movie filmed, everyone in the audience went, oh, no way! And there was that one guy, probably the cameraman, who went, I knew it.
Yeah, there's always one guy.
There's always that one guy who will never admit that he did not know. He knew it from the moment they walked in. But either way, he finds, and I got a list here, dentures, eyeglasses, a heart valve, and an entire bones of what appear to be human, and also a children's doll, which I thought was... I didn't know why they were focusing on the doll for so long until the very end when they go, he can talk.
Yeah,
or the doll can talk.
It says mama. After 2,000 years, that's pretty good.
And Zora finds this out too.
Yeah.
Which, just by dropping it.
Right. One thing I just happened to think of too is they showed the bones, but the bones are just in a pile.
Mm-hmm.
So what is that really showing if you don't put the bones together? What are you looking at? you don't really have
It's
any
just
idea.
a pile.
It's just a pile of bones of people, so...
And he put it on a cloth so no one could know.
Yeah, that cloth was kind of... Let's hide the bones here.
Yeah. Sweep it under the rug.
No one will look under this cloth.
But yeah, it was... And then I have a quote here from Dr. Zaius, who is talking to Taylor at this point about the doll, and says, the exact quote, "The Forbidden Zone was once a paradise. Your breed made a desert of it ages ago." That, I think, was the line that made people go, got it, it's Earth. Like, at that point. So, it's very interesting. So after that, they leave, they get out of the cave. The Dr. Zaius' soldiers are all around. And he looks down and says to the floor people to leave or withdraw. And then says, you got to go up there to look at the people on the cliff.
Tell them the same thing.
Same thing. It was the exact same volume, it sounded like. So they withdraw. He gets tied up. And then that, I guess, is what you would call the climax. There really isn't a climax of the film. It's more emotion, if that makes sense. Nothing really dramatic happens other than the people being tested on or taxidermified or stuffed.
Really, I found the climax to be the last 10 seconds of the movie when he finds Statue of Liberty.
And the denouement being the resolving point, or the denouement being the credits.
Yeah, I mean, there was nothing left to say at that point. I mean, you knew what the answer was then, and that was the goal in the first place, so...
I mean, the climax is defined as being the highest point of tension. I don't think that chase scene midway through the film should be the climax.
No.
Because that was the highest... Because you're like, go Taylor! Because I honestly, that was the one scene in the film that I keep going back to. Because other films, you're like, okay, he's going to be captured, or okay, he's going to do this. This one I really didn't know. Because this is the part where we're exploring the city and we're finding out more. He could either get captured and the movie would play, or he could leave and he could run away and find more people. And then they would hold like a revolt. I wasn't sure what this film was going to hold.
Which is why I'm surprised Dr. Zaius let him go at all, because I would think that's what he would do.
Yeah. I would be, if I was in Dr. Zaius' shoes, I'd go, okay, he's a mutant, which they refer to him as such. He's a mutant. There's probably more of them. He's going to go get them and revolt.
Yeah, he's already shown his intelligence.
Yeah. So there's got to be more.
Yeah, which he said. Who is it? Was it him that said when there's one, there's a whole nest of them?
Yep. Dr. Zaius said that when he told him 6 hours.
Yeah. So he knew. Now, you said earlier you saw Dr. Zaius as a hero.
I saw him as not necessarily a hero, but more in the sense of not a villain, because he really wasn't. He's in his mindset, he's doing what he thinks is right. He wants to essentially get rid of the past and get rid of like all of that, because he wants to start this new civilization, which people have done before. Like, even like entire cultures and entire people have just done that, in the sense that if they want to start a new life, then they might completely like forget all of the past, focus on the future. I think that was Dr. Zaius' whole point.
Yeah, but
maybe not a hero per se, but definitely not a villain. He's a jerk, but Taylor is more of a jerk.
Yeah, I mean, he's the closest that it came to having a villain in it. I agree. But it didn't start with him. I mean, to me, because this movie makes so many social references, it's unbelievable.
Oh my goodness!
And
To Kill a Mockingbird is just fighting with this one.
Yeah, he refers several times, especially in the court hearing, to the, what are they called? The ancient scrolls or something?
Yeah, they call it scrolls, which I thought was cool.
He was asking Taylor, what about this and what about that? And of course, Taylor had no idea what he was talking about. And they were referencing that these scrolls were hundreds of years old.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it's a lot like religion today, and that this things are 2,000 years old, like the Bible and various readings, and they're preserved. But in the case of the Planet of the Apes, he's preserving it even though he knows it's not the history of the planet.
Right.
So he's keeping it a big secret to the rest of the colony or the tribe, whatever he calls it.
Ape City.
Ape City, even though he knows better. He doesn't believe that's going to be helpful if they learn the truth. For whatever reason.
Yeah. Well, either way, Dr. Zaius is still an interesting character, especially since I thought he was going to be the good guy. I thought he was going to be the comic relief.
Is that because he was smiling in the very beginning?
Yeah. And on the CD, they have Dr. Zaius, Cornelius, and Zira on the just morphing into one another, just their face, and they were all smiling. He looked like a guy you could have some tea with.
He looked like a grandpa ape.
Yeah, essentially, it's just you walk in and he go, "You want some tea?" And then you play the movie and you're in a court case with him. And he's threatening you with 6 hours. 6 hours, still don't get it. But either way, let's kind of wrap this up. The film ends with a lot going on. So everyone's saying goodbye at this point. Taylor kisses Zira. Okay. That's just an interesting type of thing. Which you said there was a double joke behind that?
Yeah. Well, because he said to Zira, "I'd like to kiss you." And she said, "Okay, but you're so ugly." And so it's like if it was twisted or turned backwards and an ape would say to a woman, "I'd like to kiss you," the woman would probably say something similar, because to a woman, an ape would look ugly. Mm-hmm. And also, it was a woman telling Charlton Heston, who was, a big leading man at the time, that, "Hey, you're real ugly."
Yeah. Which I'm sure Kim Hunter or Zira had to have loved presenting that line.
Yeah.
And telling in front of millions of people, Charlton Heston is ugly. Mm-hmm. So Taylor and Nova, they got on a horse. They leave. Dr. Zaius explodes and seals off the cave, destroying all the evidence. Zira, Cornelius, and Lucius are charged with heresy, sorry. And then, I'm still in my court case. And then heresy. And then when Taylor and Nova leave, they find the Statue of Liberty, which is... I've seen the picture of it before, and it's even referenced in Madagascar, in the first Madagascar, which I didn't understand the context behind the film. But now seeing it and how it's presented with just the camera angles and the ocean noises in the background, because there's not like da 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 like dramatic music. It's calming ocean, little glimpses of something, and then it's Taylor slamming into the sand, saying like, "You did this," essentially. Criticizing humans, in a sense. Yeah. And ANSA for sending them. And we're supposed to assume it was a nuclear war due to the time this movie was made. Mm-hmm. The Cold War and all that.
He even said, "You blew it up." Yeah.
That's true. And Dr. Zaius I believe it's Zira Cornelius say, "What do you think he'll find out there?" And Zaius just says, "His destiny."
Yeah.
Which I was very confused of where that was going until this scene. So it was very interesting how that went. But slams his fist in the sand, says, "You blew it up." Pans back out. Nova looks really confused. And then we get a shot of him on his knees in front of a sunken Statue of Liberty. I get that there's plate tectonics and that the land would move. I understand Pangea. Why is the Statue of Liberty on what we are to assume is mainland and sunk because it's not really there. It's a little whiles out of New York. Like, you need to take a boat to get there.
Well, yeah, it's on its own little island.
Yeah.
Liberty Island.
And the island's not huge.
No, it's not. And I don't know how deep the water is around it, but I guess it's not terribly deep. But, 2,000 years.
It looks pretty good,
and
too.
And a nuclear war is, it's going to move a little bit. And tectonic plates, like you said, they're going to potentially shove the Earth up in certain areas. So I really don't believe it would be standing at all like that. But
no, but it looks pretty good for 2,000 years of nuclear war, rain, rust, all of that.
Considering that it had to be redone recently because it was completely green, and because the ocean had done that to it and turned it green, 2,000 years later, it's not green.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. But I like the way that it, like you were saying, it shows glimpses. I loved seeing the little spires on her.
And Taylor's right in the middle.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you're seeing these spires, but that's all you see. And it really makes you wonder what. It looks familiar, but you don't know why.
Well, and I remember talking to you about this almost immediately after the film ended, was I wondered if that got any critical response for the sinking of, or just like to present the Statue of Liberty in this way. I guess it didn't. I couldn't find anything of people saying they didn't like that. Because I wasn't sure if for the time people would see this as like a sign of America. Like America's going to lose the Cold War or something.
I don't think it was viewed that way. I was way too young really to have paid attention to that type of thing, but it wasn't presented in a way that was negative towards America. It was more of a worldwide statement. And that's a perfect symbol of America's freedom to kind of put out there like, hey, don't do this. Don't keep going down the same road or this could happen.
Mm-hmm. Which, after you finish the film, because then the film just ends. The credits are very short. You hear the ocean and it ends, which I thought was very well done. But then you watch the first 30 minutes again, and it makes so much more sense now. Now you realize they're in Arizona, or New York, but it was filmed in Arizona and Utah, and the flag placement, and the soil's fine, and the water's fine, and the air is breathable. Things you thought were just a little too convenient suddenly make plenty of sense. Mm-hmm. Which I never thought I'd say about this film.
I know. It
makes sense.
It took school to get you to watch this movie. I've been trying to get you to watch this movie for 10 years.
Which I said in my opening. I've been avoiding this for a century. And honestly, it's very interesting. But either way...
Do you mean a decade?
A decade. Yeah, I'm not that old. But it took me 10 years to watch it finally. And I'm glad I did. It was very interesting. As I said earlier, the budget it was a $5.8 million budget. And it released February 8th, 1968 in the Capitol Theater, was where it premiered. And in North America alone, it received $33.4 million at the box office. So, of course, sequels were probably going to be made. And according to the Fox records, the film required $12,850,000 in rentals to break even and made $20,825,000 overall. And that's pretty good.
It's pretty good for them.
I think, yeah. So for a 5.8 to get 33 million, I have no doubt that they would make a sequel, and they did, and they made a lot.
Yeah.
Tim Burton made it again in 2001, which I'm very interested to see that if we could get the chance, just because of the different spin on that. But either way, has an 88% on Rotten Tomatoes. The New York Times wrote that we're starting with the critical points of what people had to say. But Redna Elder of the New York Times wrote, quote, "It is no good at all, but fun at moments to watch." And the reason I pause is because there are commas. Very odd comma placements. Arthur D. Murphy of Variety called it an amazing film. He thought the script at times digresses into low comedy, but, quote, the totality of the film works very well. The Los Angeles Times wrote it as a triumph of artistry and imagination. It is at once a timely parable and a grand adventure on an epic scale. And Washington Post called it an amusing and unusually engrossing picture. I think all of them are kind of trying to say it's a weird film, but it makes sense in a way.
Yeah.
Except for New York Times, who didn't like it.
There's always going to be somebody who doesn't like it.
Always that one guy. But either way, and sorry, Chicago Sun-Times, my favorite, wrote much better than I expected it to be.
It's just kind of like what you said.
Yeah, I mean, it was based off of a 1963 film called La Planète des Signals. I know I'm butchering that name, but it's essentially the exact same film. It's French.
Planet of the Apes
Planet of the Apes in French, essentially.
I wonder if they have British accents.
So, I mean, I know probably your answer, but I'm interested because there's two questions I want to ask. Would you, if you watched this film in '68, would you want to watch a sequel? Like, you hear that they're making the sequel to Planet of the Apes called Beneath the Planet of the Apes. Mm-hmm. And it's 1969. You hear it's coming out in the 70s. Would you watch it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Only a big reason is because there was so much of the original Planet of the Apes was just left hanging there. They really didn't resolve anything other than the status quo was going to remain, but now you have Taylor out there somewhere. Mm-hmm. So to me, yeah, it makes perfect sense to make a sequel or go to a sequel because I want to see where they're going with it.
Yeah, and I would have watched it too. Back then, I probably wouldn't have known this, but Rod Serling was brought back to work on an outline for the sequel, so they were already fully on board with the sequel. But Serling's outline was discarded for Mort Abrahams and writer Paul Den, and they used that for Beneath the Planet of the Apes.
Oh,
which I thought that's kind of sad, but at the same point, I mean, Rod Serling still is a well-known name.
Yeah, but I mean, I have to
not for this.
I'd have to see his version because it might have just been bad.
It might have.
I mean, who knows?
Yeah, I'm not one.
Not everything the guy wrote was probably gold, so
probably. But either way, from 1970 to 1975, Planet of the Apes was doing good. In 1970, Beneath the Planet of the Apes. 1971, Escape from the Planet of the Apes. 72, Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. 73, Battle for the Planet of the Apes. And then 1974, a television series, followed by 1975, Return to the Planet of the Apes, which was animated. And then it took a couple years, 2001, they remade it with Tim Burton. And then 2011, they rebooted the series. And we have ended on July 14th, 2017 with War for the Planet of the Apes. And now comics are being made.
It's never going to end.
It's not going to end, which I don't think is really a bad thing. The film proved itself to be something worth watching. So, out of 5, I already know your answer because of bias. But out of 5, let's say 5 Statue of Liberties. How many Lady Liberties would you give this film?
I'd give it a 4.5. The reason...
Never mind, I don't know your answer again. I thought it was going to be 5.
No, but I mean, it wasn't perfect, but I really think the movie itself was misunderstood. I think it was... People went to it a lot thinking it was going to be this high-energy, total adventure type / sci-fi movie, and it was more... It was so much about humanity and trying to equate apes to humanity and how they dealt with stuff, and it said so much more than I think people understood it was going to say. And
it took a more social approach.
Total social approach. And then also, I give the creators a lot of credit for going on a limb with making these terrific monkey suits, ape suits, because they didn't have CGI to work with, and it was only what they could try to get across as believable through makeup. So,
which I can pull up the rewards real quick. I believe they did. They did win some awards, I believe. Yes, the film won an honorary Academy Award for John Chambers for his outstanding makeup achievement. The film was nominated for Best Costume Design and Best Original Score for a Motion Picture that is not a musical. The score is known for avant-garde compositional techniques, as well as the use of unusual percussion instruments and extended performance techniques, as well as his 12-note music, the violin part using all 12 chromatic notes, to give an eerie, unsettled feel to the planet, mirroring the sense of placelessness. Music's terrible. I don't care what you tell me. You can tell me there's violins, the percussion, that's great. It's just interstellar music or space music. I get it. The music fits the theme. But it's
they
like...
didn't have that back then like that.
I understand that.
It was different. It was hip. It was happening.
Right. But you had something called cool teen beach movies at the time. So like your like surfing people, and people were advertising in these trailers at the time that there was a one for, I believe it was called Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, where they talked about the different types of music that they had in the film. And it was just interesting that this film was more spacey feeling. It wasn't really over the top with its music. I understand it didn't have any musical numbers. It didn't need that, because if it did, it'd be Dr. Zaius just kind of running around singing, "I'm a scientist," or Taylor going, "I'm a jerk." But either way, music just wasn't my favorite part. But either way, so out of 5 Lady Liberties, how many would you give it?
Out of 5, I would give it a 4.5.
Okay.
It was a very good, very well done movie. Very different, and I think that's why I'm very close to 5 on it, is because they went out on such a limb between the social aspect of it that they try to bring to light, and the costumes. They told a story that was so different than anything else to that point.
Mm-hmm.
I just give them a lot of credit for the overall
the social approach.
It was a really good attempt at a lot of new things that people hadn't considered before.
Yeah, I'm close with you, but I would give it a 4. Not because of the music, but more in the sense of you had this different social approach. And I knew with Rod Serling's writing type, it wouldn't focus on like war and battle and action. So I wasn't going into that, but I was going in expecting a different type of approach of how Rod Serling thought this would kind of go, and how the director thought this would go. So, but the comedy was off a little. The pacing was a bit odd. We didn't even talk about the smoking monkey at the end when the kid comes in, and there's a smoking monkey with just a cigar in his mouth, a New York accent, legs crossed. That part I liked.
That was good.
Which would
perfect.
Automatically plus a star just for that. But yeah, the pacing was odd. I did like the ending, though, with just ocean noises, because it's supposed to give a sense of peace. There's no peace here.
Right. That's
so it's very, very juxtaposed, I think. So, either way, thank you for coming to the first ever episode of the Triple J Studios podcast. Thank you all for listening, and until next time, see you later.
Bye.